Hello and welcome to the Rippling Pages podcast. This is the podcast where we craft and curate conversations with the world's most interesting writers to inspire your reading and your writing. That's what we usually do, but today I'm joined by someone who works with some of the world's most interesting writers, helping them craft and curate their work. Rali Chorbadzyiyska is an editorial consultant at Rali Editorial, where she collaborates with renowned authors to refine their stories and elevate their voices. Over the years, Rali has worked at Penguin RandomHouse, Faber and Canongate before going independent and launching her own consultancy in 2025. From manuscript assessments to structural edits to final proofreading, from the kernel of an idea to the finished book on the shelf, Rali has seen it all when it comes to publishing. In the latest edition of Ask the Curator series, we're asking the editor what the road to publication really looks like. Rali was awarded a Rising Star Award this year by the printing charity for her work. She lives and works in London. Rali, welcome to the Rippling Pages.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Liam. And thank you so much for having me. What a lovely introduction. I feel like you've covered it for me. I was ready to talk about myself, but I don't need to.
Well, I guess you won't be used to talking about yourself, will you, in some form or other?
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, I've had to write a bio a few times now, especially that I'm freelance. Yeah, creating the website. That was a lot of thinking about how do I describe who I am and what I do in a way that's relatable.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect you're. I think there's a lot of people who want to know what does an editor do. Let's get into it then. Let's get talking about your work. But before we do, remember to like, share, review, tell your friends about the show if you enjoyed today's episode or any other episode of the Rippling Pages. But let's just start with Rali, or we've started. But just tell me about what you do. What's your work look like?
I would love to. So I work directly with authors and also with publishers of all sizes. And so the working day can look very different from one day to another. When it comes to working with writers directly, it really varies. At the moment, I'm finishing off a developmental edit for a manuscript for someone who's written a novel set in Scotland. It's really funny. And I'm really enjoying that. I also had, for example, a one-to-one book coaching session this morning with someone else who's still they've got a first draft, but they're not ready to go through a developmental edit. So it really varies. I also run workshops. Those are usually focused on how to get published, how to self-edit before you can seek professional help from an editor. And I sometimes get to chair events.
Well, you're covering all bases then, aren't you? And I guess, so you're dealing with writers that are really unpublished, no experience? Yeah, and then writers that are obviously published and on on the career path. Do you have a preference? What's it like to work with a different writer at different career stages?
I do have ideal clients in mind, but it doesn't necessarily have to do with the stage they're at. I think the stage dictates my preparation. So if you're an earlier career writer, then there's a bit more, I would say teaching, for the lack of a better word, that goes into it. Even if I'm only writing notes, there's a bit more explanation on why I suggest what I suggest. Not to say that if someone's an experienced writer, I won't tell them why I suggest what I suggest, but it just might involve more kind of assumed context if someone's more advanced in their writing career. And my ideal clients are lovely people I get along with, hardworking and receptive to feedback. But I think that's what any editor would say.
Yeah, how hard is it to? I mean, it's hard to take feedback, isn't it? But how important is that in the journey? How important is it to take feedback?
Well, I love feedback, and I think I appreciate it's such a vulnerable process, especially for writers. And hopefully they feel supported in an interaction with an editor, and they feel like that feedback is coming from an educated place and a place of support and yeah, just passion for good writing. And it's important to advance. I feel like I would love feedback as well. So when I work with people, I do ask them for feedback. And it's good to practice it as a way to continuously improve what you're doing.
Is there a difference in between the clients or the writers that you worked with in the publishing houses and the writers that you work with now?
More often it's about someone's personality. Sometimes I have been surprised. I would work with someone who's published like double digits in terms of titles, and they're still a little bit insecure about a certain aspect of their writing. It just shows that, again, it's such a vulnerable process, and you need to be patient and understanding, and also you need to be a good champion when you're an editor of that person's work. So yeah, you can come across any kind of writer when you're working with them directly, even if it's, in a publishing house or freelance.
Yeah, that's interesting. So the writer that's published 11 books is still vulnerable to
Mm.
criticism and feedback. What are the strategies that you have to work around that then? And how perhaps can someone who is writing, what strategies can they develop that
Ooh.
can help them in that process? Because you need a level of robustness, don't you, to be a writer? Because it is a personal thing. You're putting it out there and people are commenting and giving critique. But how do you develop a strategy or how would you advise people develop strategies to both perhaps receive it and give it?
I might not have, a bulletproof answer to this, but my thoughts are, to begin with your editor, you're kind of in control of who gives you feedback at those early stages. And your early readers, maybe your family, your friends, you're in control to a certain extent, because you should be aware, if your dream is to be a published author in any form, traditionally hybrid, self-published, once you publish your work, Goodreads comment section and reviews is going to be, out of your control. And so take advantage of being in control in the early stages and seek the advice of people you respect, people that are avid readers and people who care about you. So they will be able to hopefully deliver feedback and criticism in a caring way. Yeah, in terms of the editor, hopefully it's someone you trust. And even if there's a level of defensiveness, I hope that advice sinks in with time, or can do. And I think you're spot on. With experience, hopefully writers also develop confidence and realizing, and they would realize eventually, I guess, that they're not trying to please everyone, because that's impossible. So my hope is that positive feedback will stay with them for longer and it will eventually matter more. Do you have strategies?
Do I have strategies?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I would say that I think it's that thing of trust, finding the people that you trust. And I think it's also about finding it's easy to sort of look at the criticisms, and because you want to be someone who is receptive to it. I think it's really important that you become receptive to it. But I think also you do have to find the positive ones and where you are working well, and build on those. And I think that comes from a place of trust, doesn't it? Because you don't want to be. I think it's easy to sort of get a lot of criticism back and either reject it, which I don't think is the right approach, and then act on it all. And I think you've got to be selective. And I think that comes from confidence, knowing what the right one is for you and your work. And I mean, there's a famous story about V.S. Naipaul, who wouldn't change a semicolon if his editor suggested it. But then there's writers like Raymond Carver who, the Tom Mashler, wasn't it? Who
Yeah.
would, and we're talking completely different scale here, but he would leave it with him and he'd change it. I think he'd change it radically, wouldn't it, to sort of who we know Carver to be today. So I think it just comes from a level of experience as well, and you just got to try and be quite robust, I think, because you are putting personal stuff out there.
For sure.
And it just comes with experience, doesn't it? I think. So I want to say I have a strategy so much, but I think expose yourself to it as much as you can, maybe.
Yeah.
Um,
And also, one, I think, quick tip is remind yourself that it's like a moment in time. You're being
mm,
assessed on something, yes, you've created and you've put out there, but it's not an assessment of your potential. So what you produce next can be even better. It's not like feedback or criticism in case it's negative. It's not really equal to all you are. It's just based on a very specific output.
yeah, that's a good point. I think also enjoy it when you do get whether it's a rejection, feedback, or a criticism, because at least you know someone has read your work and engaged with it. And we live in a world where there's so many people putting stuff out there. Like the fact that
Yeah.
someone has spent time and to articulate some level of response to your work, I think I think it's a really positive thing. So I do quite
Mm,
like it when, and I know I've had a lot of writers on the podcast and they've published a lot of books like you will have had, and they still get rejections. They're still getting feedback.
yeah.
Like I said, the writer that's got 11 books, they still can improve. They still can. And there's a lot of people out there that are going to quite happily praise you and, build you up. And it's, there's a few people that will, and they might not always mean that either. They might not always mean
Mhm.
there's a few, there's a level of it that there is a lot of bluster sometimes. And, but I think that's really important that you focus on the positives too, which is what you seem to be saying. It's not just about feedback and criticism, it's about championing voices and elevating them. And
Yeah.
that's what you say in your website, and that's part of your values, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. It it's probably what I enjoy a lot about editing and also going freelance. One of the things that I wanted to do more of, and one of the reasons why I wanted to go freelance is that I wanted to work directly with authors. That's what I've always found the most enjoyable about working in editorial in-house. And yeah, when you're freelance, you get to do that a
Was that
lot
the
of your
biggest
times.
change? Was that what precipitated you going independent?
It was a few kind of factors. Um, that was my ideal scenario of what I would like my working life to look like. And also, I really wanted responsibility and to be developing my own skills. So when you're working in-house, you do have a list that you're working on. And because of how publishers work, that list is somewhat defined by genre, or yeah, it could be fiction, nonfiction, and then within that, um, there can be further, not limitations, how do I say it? Labels. Anyway, at the moment, I can have clients working on very different projects. And to me, that's valuable because it gives me variety in my workload, but also exposure to to different expectations, reader expectations, writer expectations. I would still say there's specific genres I have expertise in compared to others, and there's clients that I won't be the best fit for. I don't work with popular science nonfiction or any serious nonfiction. I do tend to focus on things with a narrative, so fiction and narrative nonfiction. But yeah, I've learned so much. And even getting that award from the printing charity, that's been a game changer. And it's enabled me to go on courses with the Chartered Institute for Editorial Professionals, get accreditation from them. That's been really exciting. And being freelance has meant a lot of creative freedom. So I would say I've got a lot of ideas at all times, and it's fun to be able to explore them and have more time to dedicate to running an Instagram and organizing events, that kind of thing that would be, you can still do it when you're working in-house, of course. And there's good examples of people who are very successful in their publishing careers and their creative output. Maybe for me, it's just being easier to do it on my own.
I mean, it's hard. I mean, you're also talking about things like marketing, self-promotion. Right? Do writers have to do that now as well? Do they have to be a bit more fluent in
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I'm sorry for all the writers that don't want to hear that. But it really makes a difference. And I'm having to advise writers that are considering self-publishing, hybrid, and traditional. And to be honest, your own label, like developing a brand for yourself, like making your name recognizable, is useful no matter what route to publication you choose. I'm sure any in-house publicity team would appreciate a new author with a platform or with, I don't know, strong ties to a local bookshop or a local community.
What do you mean by that? Sorry.
The ties to a community, or so, for example, if an author is part of a book club or a writers group, and that leads to, you know, connections to other writers, to other readers, that could, I think, could mean something.
From a
When
sales
you get
perspective.
published, or more just reaching audiences, sales, but also marketing slash publicity. From a sales perspective, yes, connections to bookshops for sure. If you have a local bookshop and you get published and that local bookshop becomes your champion, then that's lovely and great news to a sales team, I'm sure. Or can host an event for you.
Wow. So yeah, get into your local networks, get out there, and not just social media then, isn't it? It's about person, it's about being out there, it's about you know, we've connected in that way. And I think, but there are some really meaningful connections you can make.
Mm.
And I enjoy it. You know, I enjoy it.
I enjoy it as well. I think people that love reading and books are really nice on Instagram and generally supportive. I say Instagram because that's the platform I use the most, but Book Talk is huge, I'm sure.
What for you then is what's the top tip? I hate that word. I hate that phrase, but I think we have to ask you
Why?
this. Yeah, top,
No.
it's a bit cheesy, isn't it? What is it for you that if there was a you know, one piece of advice that you could give to a writer that might be listening?
Uh, I wish I
Apart
had
from come and access,
prepared.
apart from
Yeah,
come
I
and
wish
buy
I had.
your services, but it don't
Okay,
have to
no,
be. It
I've
don't have
got
to be.
it. I've got
It
it.
don't have to be one. But
I've got it. My top tip would be to read. And I think when you're an editor or a writer, reading has been ruined for you. So what I mean by read is not just for pleasure, but to learn from what other people are doing and from what's been published. And it doesn't mean you'll always love it, but even figuring out what you don't like and the reasons why you don't like a certain way of writing, for example, that's very useful for your own craft. And it's not necessarily free because you have to pay for books, and I think that's right to do. But it's free in terms of anyone can invest in books and try to be reflective and analytical when they're reading other people's works before investing in courses or working with editors or looking for agents.
I love that.
And it will really make you a well-informed uh, person in terms of the market placement of things as well. You
Definitely,
know,
I love
what's
that. I love
popular.
that.
Yeah.
I think people think there's a golden key to writing and getting published, and it's, you know, who you know and all that. But I think fundamentally, as you just said, it's about reading and
Mm.
it's about writing. You've got to, one way or another, you've got to like books, you've got to be interested in books, and you've just got to write something. You just got
Yeah.
to get out and get writing. I like that critical
Yeah.
reading. From a there was a level in there that, as well of you've got to enjoy it. You've
Oh
got to read
yeah.
widely, but also just be quite, you know, try and develop a bit of an eye for what's going on. Really, I love that,
Absolutely.
Rally. I think that's great advice. And I guess then just for you, is there a book that you're looking forward to that might be coming out soon, or that you've read this year that I think is everyone else should be reading?
Yes. So I mentioned one of the books I'm looking forward to, and it's Farah Ali's Telegraphy. And that's coming out 15th of January 2026 from CB Editions. And it's very literary, um, centers around the character of Annie, who's very interesting and suffers from ailments with unknown nature. That's kind of only the beginning of it.
Interesting.
And another book that I'm looking forward to, well, I've already read it, but you could all read it next year, and it's called The 10-Year Affair by Erin Sommers, and it's a novel about adultery.
Okay.
But it's very funny. So yeah.
Very, very, very matter of factly said. I like that. Farah, maybe I can get Farah on the show. Maybe I can, if it's something that you're really excited about, maybe that could be the first rippling page he recommends, and we can get maybe we could get her on the show.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, we've had CB editions on before with Caroline Clark, the poet, and that was an amazing episode. Yeah, maybe we can see if we can work that out. Well, Rali, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thanks for giving an insight into the publishing industry, to writing, top tips and advice. How can people get in contact with you and if they're interested in working with you?
Well, thank you so much, Liam, for having me and the Rippling Pages. And thank you to the Rippling Pages listeners for listening. You can find me on my website, which is ralieditorial.com. I'm also on Instagram at Reading Rali.
Reading Rali editorial, brilliant. A quick Google search, I'm sure, will bring you up.
Yes.
And then if you look through my followers, you'll find Rali. And then obviously we'll be putting links out for the show anyway. Oh, Rali, it's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed your time. Thanks so much for giving up what I suspect is a very busy schedule that you have, supporting reading writers, editing them, critiquing them, championing them as well. That's the message I got. Yeah. Championing them as well. But for now, Rali, thank you so much for being on the Rippling Pages.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.